Welcome back to PodX. Our guest for today is Anjali Merchant. Anjali Merchant is an entrepreneur who has kept herself active in the startup space by being a founder to many ventures and has also been active in the corporate space by being a part of her family business. Having a Bachelor of Science in Entrepreneurship and Strategic Management from Babson College and an MBA from London Business School, I'm really excited to have Anjali share her experiences and lessons with us. So, Anjali, thank you so much for joining in. It's really amazing having you.
Thank you, Ayush. Excited to be here.
Yeah, I wanted to ask you about the startup space and the entrepreneurial part and all. So, how does one get an idea? How does one find a co-founder? And what's the whole experience about having a startup and working on it?
Okay, so in terms of an idea, I think that it's quite easy to get an idea. As in, I like anyone, everyone gets about a bunch of ideas a day. It could be something very tiny. It could be something huge. But an idea is very normal, and you probably hear like a lot of people saying, "I had the idea of like I don't know Facebook first," or "I had the idea of Spotify much before Spotify came out." But it's all about the execution part of it. It doesn't matter. A lot of people have the idea, but if you don't act on it, it really doesn't matter. So I think out of all of the businesses that I did, the first one that I actually of all the ideas that I thought about, the first that I actually acted on was one in my undergrad, which was on the campus, and then I later went on to do one more when I was doing my MBA with a partner, and I think to find a right co-founder, I think the first thing you need is like an immense amount of trust. So you have to kind of like trust the person blindly because they're kind of taking care of your baby when you're not, and vice versa. So you need like an immense level of trust. And to actually find a person like that, I think you really need to put yourself in some sort of a situation where you would. So at least for me, it was very strategic. Now that I think back on it, in the sense that I found my partner while I was at London Business School, while I was doing my MBA. It was a very proper sort of place to find a co-founder, right? It wasn't like I was out with friends one day and something just clicked. So for me, it was a very like sort of it sprung up in very sort of strategic places. Not that I planned for it that way, but that's just how it happened. So I think if you're specifically looking for one, the best way to do it is to surround yourself in an environment where similar people are looking for a co-founder, or you're going to study somewhere or some sort of similar background. Because my husband, for example, I know he's had quite a tough time trying to find a co-founder when he's wanted to for his businesses as well. So I think being in the right place at the right time is very important for that.
Yeah, I think the part where you spoke about, finding the right co-founder part. So I have spoken to a few other people, and they also told me this thing, which is something similar to what you said. It's not always true that some of your best friends can also be your co-founders. They can, your best friends can't always be your best co-founders, and nor can your best co-founders. I mean, your co-founders can be your best friends. And that was something which was really amazing that clicked in, because he said that you need to find the right people who lack the skills, who have the skill set that you lack, and so that you all can come together and work as a team on building something really new.
Yeah. So I completely agree. Like my co-founder she was my roommate in during my time at my MBA, and I feel like we were very tight, and we decided to do this first year in. But I think doing Dryfix together got us even closer and even tighter, and now I just can't imagine a time without her.
But I wanted to ask you that question. Like you said, that there are so many people who get multiple ideas and different ideas, you think about it and all, but the execution is the key role that comes into play. So how does one get from having that idea to the execution part? What do you tell yourself? How do you push yourself? Because a lot of people might just have an idea today and they'll be like, okay, tomorrow they forget about it. Oh, I don't want to do it anymore and all.
Okay, so one is you have to care enough to do it, as in you just have to get off the sofa and get off your bum and just go and do it. Like that's the only when you actually get up and make an active action to do it is when you'll take it forward. If you're just thinking about it, that's not going to help. But two is I think action is not, you don't need to think about every idea as some big grand business. Like it doesn't need to already go to some, like, you don't need to already think about the way you're going to IPO it. You just need to think about it as like the small idea that it is, and maybe test it out in the small ways that you can. So for example, with DryFix, for us, what we did is we made sure that we went to so DryFix is a hairstyling club. We had started a chain of hairstyling clubs, and we wanted to know whether, and it was the first in India, it didn't exist. So we wanted to make sure that there was a sort of market in India for it. So we decided to go to gyms and give a day of free hairstyling and see whether people would even show up, whether it made sense for people to come and do hairstyling without having to do your nails and your threading and your hair color and all of that with it, which is what the Indian women consumer is used to right now. So you need to find small ways that you can test your business, and something that you're willing to give. Some people are willing to give their time. Some people are willing to give their money. Some people are willing to give small little things that don't maybe affect them in their daily life, that you can test your idea with, and you can quickly realize whether you want to take it forward or not. Right? And if you do these small tests, you don't need to go and tell 100 people about it, go and advertise it everywhere, but you can do these small tests. You can do like a small survey. You can do something small that kind of takes you to the next step, that makes you realize whether, oh, was this just a small idea, or am I taking this a little further?
Another thing which I've realized, when like you said about starting, you need to start doing things in their own and all. It kind of tells you what you don't want to do also. Like even in business, you said when you're doing these small surveys, these small tests and all that stuff, it's kind of linked that, okay, now you know that this idea didn't work, so you know what not to do ahead, and you know what to do ahead. So that I think that like doing these tests and all can be like a really amazing thing. And also, how do you convince yourself to take that risk up though?
Like I said, these tiny tests that you do kind of give you a little bit more confidence, because it's not just based on your head anymore. It's based on actual sort of statistics. It's actual data out there that tells you that, okay, out of 100 people, 80 people seem to care about this product, and 40 people seem to buy my competitor. Or you have real data in front of you. So I feel like those tests really help. And another way that you can maybe take risks is just another time actually you take risks. I feel like the younger you are, the easier it is to take the risks. So I feel like someone at my father's age he starts thinking about like the time that he has left and what he wants to do with his current businesses and all of that. And until some new blood or some new energy comes into the business, I at least earlier, it was a little tough for him to kind of push it forward, or maybe look at new businesses for him to start. But I feel like the younger you are, like when I was in college, I didn't have a care in the world. Like I didn't have any restrictions. I was very easily able to take whatever risks in terms of my professional life. Now that I'm married, it gets a little harder. Maybe 10 years down the line, it'll be a little harder for me. So risks, yeah, it's tough. And I feel like the tests help. But the younger you are, just sort of push yourself a little more, because the older you get, it's just going to get that much tougher.
I mean, I'm not sure about this, but I've actually thought about this a lot, which is I feel the reason is I'm not sure. Maybe I may be wrong about this, but is it because when we are younger, there's a lack of responsibility that we have? Like, we don't have to take care of the family, we don't have to put food on the table, or there's not someone waiting for us at home and all. Versus when people, as they get older, they have families, they have to think about their children, they have to think about their aging parents, they have to think about what's left and what to do ahead and all. Is it because of that? Versus when we are younger, we are just like the ones in the receiving end?
Yeah, so I mean, of course it's that. And don't get me wrong, there are a lot of people that take risks at the age of like 60, 70. They start new businesses that are very, very successful. If you see this Arvind Aike, I think he started at like 58 or 60, and it's turned out to be a huge success. So there are a lot of people that do have this kind of energy at that age, but it definitely isn't the norm. I feel like the norm, like you said, is because you don't have responsibilities when you're younger. You don't have the restrictions, and you're not comfortable in any form of life, right? You're still looking forward to what is to come. So I mean, there's no real structure to anyone's life, but I feel like between like 20 to 40 is really like your building years. Like you can create a lot within then, and post 40 also you can, but just 20 to 40 I feel like is kind of the pushing years.
But then, like when you're taking these risks, when you're starting different businesses and ventures and all, there are bound to be failures and all. So have you encountered failures? If so, if you could like tell us about them and how have you dealt with them?
Sorry, I missed that. It got cut a bit. Could you repeat the
Yeah.
question?
Okay, so since we are always like, 20 to 40 is a prime time of building and all, and obviously you've been a part of so many ventures. So obviously there might have been ups and downs. There may have things that have worked that may not have worked and all, and there may be failures and all. So what's your experience with failure and how did you deal with it?
So, I mean, obviously, in any business, you have these tiny failures that you hiccups and things that you get through. But I think one of the hardest things we've had to do was when we closed down Dryfix because of the pandemic. There was nobody was really going for hairstyling, and it didn't make sense for us to have to pay rent. We had just started our second location, so it didn't make sense for us to have to pay rent during the times that basically the entire world was shut down, right? And so we did go through a lot of failures. There have been times where I've kind of put my ideas forward and worked for them for about a month, 2 months, and then realized that maybe it's not viable. And one thing that you have to realize is the way to deal with failure is to understand the flip side, right? So, for example, at Dryfix, if we hadn't made the decision early on, which was sort of in May, which was about 2 months into the pandemic, we realized that maybe right now is not the time to continue, and we can restart it once the pandemic is done. If we hadn't made that decision then, I would have had 2 years of sort of losses and trying to push a business that probably is not meant for a period where nobody is entertaining. No, the weddings are much smaller. People aren't doing that much hairstyling. I would have tried to keep pushing a business that maybe wasn't ready for the market that I was trying to sell it to. The losses would have been that much more, right? For ideas that maybe I worked on for 2 months and that didn't go through. Those ideas have to try and understand that I decided not to go ahead for a reason, and I skipped on the losses that I may have faced going forward. So some businesses are, you're not meant for every industry for every time period. Sometimes people are too early, sometimes they're too late, sometimes there's a global pandemic. So you need to kind of work around what you have and try to make sure that you're always creating value in any form of business that you do, whether it's your family business or a new startup, and kind of learn and catch up on the failures as fast as you can. So fail fast and fail really, really, really cheap, because that's the only way to go.
I can relate to that, but not not at the exact same level, but I would say at a very, very different and minute level. So before I started this podcasting thing, I had like 5 YouTube channels, and it was like different kinds of content, which I was doing a trial and error testing, and they didn't kind of work out. And there was like one time where I also put out these videos of fake accented ones and all, and they worked out really well. But then I had to like kind of ask myself, is this a legacy that I want? Or because if it's on the internet, it might be forever. So that's when I decided that maybe no, even though it's getting a lot of views, I decided to like take down those videos. And I was still thinking different ideas on how can I do something that would provide value and which would also let me learn on the same progress. And that's when I came up with the podcast idea. And it's also something that I really enjoy. But it was like before that, there were like 4 failed YouTube channels, and this was the fifth one.
Yeah. So, and you're doing a great job. So I'm glad you started with the podcast.
Thank you so much. But I wanted to ask you this thing, since you've seen both the sides, you've seen the startup world and you've seen the corporate world. So what do you think is like the pros and cons of both of them and the differences between them? Like,
yeah. So the corporate world. So I worked at Bayer. I did a pharmaceutical job over there while during my MBA time, and I honestly feel like so. It depends on what kind of person you are. Like the corporate world gives you a job profile, and you kind of stick within the job profile, and you can sort of it's a very easy ladder. It's like everything is laid out. It's like a board game. Everything is present in front of you. You know where the end point is. You know where the start point is. You know how to get there. All of that stuff. It's all figured out. And when it comes to like a startup, that's all over the place. Like for Dryfix, I've cleaned the floors. I've also like done investor meetings. I've also done like you are everything from the chaprasi to the CEO, right? There's nothing in between that you don't do. You do every single job. So you have to be willing to kind of get your hands dirty, and be okay with a lot of uncertainty. Which is what comes up with a startup. But then again, the plus side of that is I've never been more fulfilled in my life other than when I'm doing a startup. Like it's like you. So I know for Bayer, it was there 100 years before me, and it will probably be there 100 years after me, whether I'm in the company or I'm not. With a startup, it's kind of like your baby. It can't grow without you. It's very, very, very dependent on you. And the idea is for it not to be, but the whole phase that you go through, kind of making it non-dependent, is what's really, really fun. So that's the difference I see.
So I wanted to add like a point and a question following that, but someone else also gave me this very similar advice that you gave me, which was that you need to treat your business like your own shop. So when the the shopkeeper, when a customer comes, he will put out his goods to sell it and all. And when the customer goes, he will also be the one sweeping the floor so that more customers come in. And I think that was an advice which is kind of similar to what you said, that you need to look at all roles, and you can't be like, oh, I won't do this kind of job, I won't do this job and all. And I find that really very fascinating.
Yeah, no, it's a lot of fun, especially if you get, like we were discussing, if you get the right co-founder, it's a lot of fun.
And I wanted to ask you this, like, how do you think for like startups and all, what do you think do investors look for when people are raising funds?
So one is definitely profitability. Like, what kind of problem is it solving, and do people actually want to buy it? Because if you're solving a problem that doesn't really exist, it doesn't matter. So you have to make sure that you can convert something that like like a solution to a problem to an actual product that people are willing to buy. So if you are able to do that, and if people see some sort of history that people are buying it, so if you show them, like, even if you show them 100 customers data or 1,000 customers data, they are willing to buy it. I'm pretty sure the investor is some form of an investor would be interested at some level or the other.
And what do they look for, like, in the founders? Because there have been sometimes where there have been tremendously great ideas, but still they've not gotten funded because of the people who are a part of the team, or for whatever reason. So, okay, I would change the question a bit. Why do you think they would say no to someone?
So again, I feel like in terms of no, I think, let me say what they would say yes to, because different people are different. I'm not really sure what their hiccups are, I think maybe someone untrustworthy. If you don't feel trust with the person, I don't think you would put your money there, because you're putting your money into someone else's hands, literally writing it off, right? So someone untrustworthy, I don't think would work out. And two is someone not passionate about their product or about their business, because there are 100 people, like a lot of people are going to say no, right? You have to make sure that you are willing to go that extra mile for your business or for your product. So if I think untrustworthy and not passionate, I think those two would kind of deter investors from looking at an investment with a certain company.
Yeah, I think so. Something persistence, like it's similar to what he said. What he said is like similar to what persistence is, and I feel that is one of the biggest things that can help someone continuously like push ahead and move ahead. And that's I'm speaking from my experience, because there have been times where I've reached out to people for podcasts and they're like, call back after 3 months, and I call them back after 3 months. They're like, call back after 6 months. I will reach out to them after 6 months, and they're like, okay, this person is very, very persistent. He's still trying, so he really does want to learn and whatever. So they say yes. Like I had this person who does he had stopped doing a lot of these podcasts and all, because he gets like a lot of people calling him for podcasts and all. So he said to call me. He told me to call him back after 3 months. I did that. He told me to call him back after 6 months. I did that. Then he was like that. Since I didn't have that false ego and not giving up, and the thing that I continuously wanted to do it, he agreed to be a guest on my podcast. And that was a podcast which he had done in a long while. So like he hadn't done any podcast for a long period, and then he came in my podcast. So I think that was one of the most greatest feelings ever.
Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, you have to keep going. No, I completely agree with you, and I admire you for that. I think it's very, very, very much required to be persistent.
I wanted to ask you, like, so how do you still learn? You know, as people age older, I think people lose the habit of reading books. So, like, I wanted to know, how do older people learn? Somewhere your age, I would say somewhere around early 30s or something.
Yeah. So, in terms of learning, one thing that I don't like to read business books and things like that. I feel like I studied it, so I don't like to read it myself. But audiobooks help me a lot. I read them. I hear them quite often whenever I'm sitting in the car, I'm listening to some sort of audiobook or the other, and when I'm alone. And then the second thing is I feel like my family and friends. I think living in Bombay, the kind of conversations you have always circulate back around to some form of work or some form of business. I think being brought up in a business family, even when we're sitting on a dinner table discussion, a few days ago we were having like an early Diwali dinner, and again everything sort of reeled back into business and who the founders of this thing were and what they've started and what they're doing. And I feel like my friends and family around me also kind of push me a lot and make me learn. My husband's always talking about something related to some form of business or markets or something or the other that kind of interests me a lot. So those are like the informal ways. And I guess a more formal way is, in my head at least, I've decided to kind of go through some sort of formal learning every 10 years. So I finished my undergrad after, I mean, 4 years later, I did my grad school. And I think maybe in about maybe in another 7, 8 years, I'd like to do some other form of like executive learning or something maybe smaller, maybe like a 1 month, 3 month course, just to kind of keep me up to date as to what's going on in the world and how, because things keep changing, especially with technology. The world keeps changing, and it's important for us to be up to date. And I actually got this from my grandmother. She was the first on Facebook, the first on Hype. Like before all of us were a part of all of this, she's on Instagram. She knows how to send everything to everyone. So I think I get that from her, and I'd like to kind of continue that process.
So, like you said, you've been a part of informally. You've learned so many people from the people around you and all that stuff. So, what would be some of the best advices which you've got from people?
Some of the best advice. The first thing I would say, like, I mean, I mentioned that earlier as well, which is that if for startups specifically, fail cheap and fail fast. That's very, very, very important. I cannot stress how important that is, especially if you want to go down a path of an entrepreneur. Like if you feel like that's the way that you see yourself going ahead, it's not going to be one business. Even if your first business is successful, say you sell it and you start another one, you're never going to be happy with one sort of business. So you are going to kind of try new ideas. So make sure you kind of fail fast and fail cheap in case it's not working out. The second thing is find a good co-founder. Like that was very, very important for me. And I think it's kind of made me push what I was going through. Like anytime you're in a slump or you're in a low, it kind of helps you push that much more forward. So make sure that you have a good co-founder that you trust and you're happy with, and kind of counters what you can do and what you can't do. So that's the third thing. Sorry, that's the second thing.
Say.
And then I mean, I used to feel like it's very, very important that you're passionate about it, but I don't sort of believe that too much anymore. I feel like passion, you definitely need it till a certain point. Like if you don't care about something at all, you're not going to work towards it. So you need passion to a certain point. But after that, I'm pretty happy with any sort of business that kind of motivates me and pushes me. So if you're motivated, it's enough. You don't need to kind of feel like now I work in pharmaceuticals, and before this I was working in hairstyling. So the same person can't be as passionate about hairstyling as you are about pharmaceuticals, but that doesn't change the fact that I want to create value and I want to kind of push a good product out there. So that's what you need to be passionate about, maybe not just the specific industry. Yeah.
I wanted to ask you this thing. How do you think one can find their own purpose? Because a lot of people, especially my age, I have seen this. I don't know what I want to do ahead. I haven't figured out things and all. I don't know what my purpose is. I don't know what I want to, I don't have any plans and all. But how do you think can someone find their meaning, their purpose on what would be important? And also, how do you think they can be motivated for that?
Yeah. So in terms of your purpose, I think the older you get, the more you get a feeling inside that this isn't fitting, right? So when you're a kid, you have your parents telling you that, okay, this is what you have to do, this is what you don't have to do, and that's what you do because that's you're a kid, and that's how you go forward in life. But as you grow older, if you spend time doing something that you don't like and that you're not motivated for, you will get a feeling inside. My advice here or suggestion, I don't think I'm equipped to give advice, but my suggestion here is listen to that voice. Like, even if you feel it a little bit, push it a little forward, see if it's making sense to you, and if it isn't, make the action of changing that. Don't be stuck in something and in a rut for the rest of your life being unhappy. Like, make the action to change something that makes you a little happier. That's what I would say. And you will get that feeling inside you.
Hopefully, I'm hoping, right? As of now, I haven't been able to feel any of that yet. So yeah.
Yeah, no, I think it'll take a bit. It took me some time too.
Okay, so I'm coming to the end of it. So, what would be your advice for anyone who is listening to this podcast or watching it, like to the audience?
My advice would be that if I'm assuming that your audience is like people your age,
Correct.
right?
Yeah.
So I'm probably someone almost double your age. I think you're 17, right?
Yeah, I'm 17.
Yeah, you're 17. So I'm 31 right now. So I feel so as clueless as you are right now. That's probably how clueless I am at 31. So it doesn't get any more. I'm assuming that someone at the age of 45 is probably as clueless as I am. So a lot of people are faking it till they make it, even at my age, even at 45, right? So don't feel afraid to question. Like, just because someone says something confidently and says that you have to do something in a certain way, the older you get, don't feel shy or don't feel scared to question it just because they've said in a certain way. Like you said, be humble, but make sure that you get your point across, because there's make sure you get your point across so that you can finally make those actions to take your life forward in the path that you want to, right? Not just don't just go with the flow because that's the way people are going. Just make sure you make the actions and ask the questions that kind of redirect your life in the way that you kind of feel a little more comfortable with and feel a little happier with.
Thank you so much for being a part. I had an amazing time having you, and I personally
Thank
learned a
you.
lot.
Yeah. Thank you so much. Thank you for having me. I'm not sure if I could be of much help, but I'm glad that you called me on here, and I'm happy to be here.